Hello, everyone. Welcome to Free Grant Education Friday, or welcome back to Free Grant Education Friday. My name is Crystal Petry. I am a grant writer and a grant strategist. I've spent over 15 years helping nonprofits, for profit, entrepreneurs, and organizations secure funding across federal, state, local, and even private foundations. Over the past few weeks, if you have been with us every Friday for the Free Grant Education Friday, or even if it's your first time here, we have talked about some amazing topics as it pertains to grant writing and grant education. Some of those topics are grant strategy, budgets, very important, funders, how do funders think, scaling, how to scale your business from perhaps $50,000 in grants to $500,000 in grants. Doesn't that sound nice? And building a fundable organization. Today, we're talking about a question that I hear all the time, and perhaps a question that you have asked yourself, your staff, your community, your team around you. Should I hire a grant writer or should I learn to write grants myself? I hear this question all the time. And perhaps you have been asking yourself that same question. Should I hire someone to do my grant writing, my grant research, or should I learn to do it myself? And the answer is it depends. That is my honest answer. It depends. It depends on your capacity. It depends on your goals. And it depends on your stage of growth. Again, the answer is it depends. But stay with me. I'm going to break that down for you. And by the end of Free Grant Education Friday, in about 28 minutes, you should be able to answer that question for yourself. Today, we are going to break down. I am going to break down for you when it makes sense to learn grant writing for yourself, because really most people can learn to write grants. Most people can learn to research grants. I'm also going to break down when it's smarter to outsource. Okay? And how to avoid becoming dependent on someone else for your funding strategy. And as a grant strategist, 10 out of 10, I do not recommend dependency or codependency. So let's get into it. The first question is not, can you learn grant writing? As I stated, most people can learn grant writing. Most people can learn grant research. You are most people. You can learn grant writing. You can learn grant research. That's not the question. Can you learn grant writing? The question is, do you have the capacity? The question is, do you have the time? The question is, do you have the bandwidth? That's the question. Because when it gets down to grant writing, it takes a lot. And I do mean a lot. Grant writing, some of the things that grant writing takes, you have to research. You have to find the grants. You have to read the grants. You have to figure out, does this grant align with your organization? Do you align with the funder of this grant? It takes strategy. It takes data gathering. Will you be able to gather all of the information that the funder is requesting? Will you be able to store that information in a way that the funder wants it stored? Because they want data stored in a very particular way. Will you be able to do that? Will you be able to create the forms to get the data? These are the questions. What about your budget? Will you be able to develop your budget and then stick to that budget? What about compliance? Do you understand compliance? These are the questions when I say, do you have the capacity? And that is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to grant writing. So honestly, do you have the capacity yourself? Think about it like this. If you are a small business, a medium-sized business, solopreneur, or maybe you are a director or the executive director of a nonprofit or for-profit, you are running daily operations, you're managing staff, you're delivering programs, you're handling clients, you're doing payroll, time and hours, vacation and sick, the compliance part of that as well. You may not have the time to fully manage and operate grants at a high level. So again, it's not about can you learn grants? Most people can. But do you have the time to do it? Do you have the capacity to do it? Do you have the staff to do it? Because if you don't have the staff to do it, guess who gets to do that? You guess right. You get to do all of that. And if you don't have the time, if you don't have the capacity, if you don't have the bandwidth, if you don't have the staff, that's okay. It really, really is. But here's the danger. Here's the part that most people don't say out loud. Most grant writers probably don't say out loud. That's the danger. That part is dangerous. Some organizations outsource everything without understanding anything. That creates dependency. 10 out of 10 do not recommend. Your healthiest position, even if you hire help, you should still understand the grant process. You should understand the grant language. You should understand the grant strategy, because this is your organization. It's not the grant writers organization. It's not the grant strategist organization. This is your organization. You have built this organization. You have grown this organization. You have registered this organization with your state. You have gotten your LLC. You have gotten the EIN. You have hired the staff. This is your baby. This is your child. And you have to understand your child. You have to understand your baby. Let's talk about time versus return on investment. Time versus ROI. Some people spend months, maybe years, trying to figure out grants. They apply randomly, they Google grants, and if you have done that, click away, Close the X, close the Google, because Google is our best friend. But Google will give you millions and millions of options. If you've done that, you know exactly what I'm talking about. You chase every opportunity because you don't know which opportunity to apply for and which ones to not apply for. That time has a cost. If you don't know what you are doing, you are wasting your time. And there is a saying, if you don't plan to succeed, then you plan to fail. If you don't have a plan when it comes to grant writing, then you plan to fail. So ask yourself, would your time be better spent running your programs, growing and developing your staff, building partnerships, being out in the community, growing your organization, growing your baby? Would your time be better spent doing that and so much more to make your organization operate smoothly and function smoothly? Sometimes hiring a professional grant writer, a professional grant strategist saves time, which time is the only commodity we can never get back. Sometimes hiring a professional saves stress, right? Saves the midnight work session, saves the 5 a.m. work sessions. Hiring a professional can save you stress, but it can also save you missed opportunities. But here's another truth that I want to make sure I give you and make sure you understand this. Please, please listen to this. Take notes to what I am about to tell you. Hiring a grant writer does not, I repeat, does not magically fix weak infrastructure. That means your organization is not ready for grants. I did an entire free grant education Friday on that topic last Friday. Make sure and go back and watch and listen and learn. That was May the 8th, last Friday. I mean, May the 1st, I believe, last Friday. I talk about building your infrastructure, building your foundation. Hiring a grant writer will not, and we cannot build and fix a weak infrastructure. Hiring a grant writer does not magically fix poor data. You have to already have an understanding of how to gather data, how to put it together, how to read it, how to understand it, how to store it properly. Hiring a grant writer does not, I repeat, does not magically fix not having a strategy. We just can't do it. And most grant writers will not do it. It goes back to understanding your baby, understanding your child, understanding your organization, and having those things in place before you outsource. You have to have an infrastructure. You have to have a foundation for your organization. You have to have an understanding about data and how to capture it. You have to have a strategy before you outsource. What a grant writer will do once you have a strong foundation, Once you understand about collecting your data, once you have a strategy, a grant writer can use all of those things to strengthen your proposal, to create a fundable pipeline that's sustainable. But they cannot and they will not build your organization for you. And that grant writer is me. I cannot, and it's most grant writers, I cannot and I will not build your organization for you. Before you outsource, you need to have a good understanding of your organization. You need to have a solid foundation. You need to have an understanding about data, strategy, your budget, your money. Understand those things before you outsource your grant writing, before you outsource your grant research. If you have those things and decide to hire a grant writer, they will come in and strengthen what you already have. And that's the goal for the grant writer. That should be the goal for you as the business owner, whether you are a for-profit organization or a nonprofit organization or an entrepreneurship, a small business, a medium-sized business, a large business. The goal is to make your organization successful. And that's what any ethical, morally responsible grant writer wants to do. Let's talk about control. This part people don't talk about enough. And I promise, when I said control, I immediately thought about that Janet Jackson song, Control. Yes. If you completely outsource your funding strategy, again, 10 out of 10 do not recommend. You lose visibility. You don't understand why your grants are winning. You don't understand why your grants are losing. You don't understand what the funders are asking for or why they are even asking for specific things. You don't even understand how your organization is being positioned. Is the grant writer writing how you want your organization positioned? Is the grant writer writing what your organization actually does? If you release all of that control, as Janet Jackson says, you completely lose visibility. You never, ever, ever want to completely outsource your funding, your fundraising, your grant writing, your taxes. Like, I know we're talking about grants here, but let me just pivot and stay with me. You never want to outsource anything, completely outsource anything as it pertains to your organization. And in fact, as it pertains to your life. That's something 10 out of 10 do not recommend. Strong leaders understand the process. Even if you're not writing every single word of the grant, even if you're not doing all the research, you still understand the process. You understand the language. You understand the questions. You understand the budget. Okay? Think about it like this. You may hire an accountant to do your finances, to do your taxes, but you still need to understand your finances. You still need to understand your taxes. You still need to know how much money is coming in, how much money is going out. You need to make sure that the taxes are being paid. You still need to have an understanding of this. And we hear about it all the time, especially with celebrities who get in trouble for taxes. And the first thing they say is, I didn't know. I didn't know they wasn't paying the taxes. I didn't know. This is what happens, or one of the things that happens when you completely outsource without understanding. You end up with, I didn't know they were doing that. It's the same thing with grants. You want to have an understanding of the process. You want to have an understanding of the language. You want to have an understanding of the strategy. The strongest organizations learn enough to lead strategically and then outsource with intention. So at this point, it is story time, boys and girls. Story time, boys and girls. I am going to tell you a personal story that literally just happened to me this week. If you have gone to my website, and if you have not gone to my website, why not go to my website? My address for my website is CAPETRYLLC.com. Again, the address for my website, CAPETRYLLC.com. My website is beautiful. It is professional, it is strategic, and it was built with intention. I hired someone to do that. I outsourced the building of my website. Now, let me tell you this. I understand how to build a website. I know how to build a website. And because I do understand about building websites, I know how to build websites. I know how to make additions. I know how to remove things. I know enough, right? On Monday that just passed, there were some things that I needed to do in my website. I needed to update the language on my website. I needed to update the call to action and some other things. I needed to update some emails, some automations. I needed to do this thing. And because I have a really, really good understanding about websites and building websites, I decided to do it myself because I can do it myself. This started on Monday that just passed. By Thursday, I'm still working on my website in the mornings, late at night, during the day, between clients. I'm still working on this website. I had lunch with one of my best friends. Her name is Shantae. Beautiful, intelligent woman. And I was venting to her about how I am tired of working on this website. I am exhausted with it. I've spent all of my time working on this website and fixing this website and adding some things to this website and removing some things from this website. I told my friend Shantae, I didn't even want to look at my website again. My website for my business. So we're talking about time here. Talking about time. Remember, talking about capacity. Remember, talking about stress. Remember, I told my friend Shantae, I don't even want to look at this website again. And my friend Shantae said, that's why you hire someone to do it. And I was in complete agreement. This is why I hired a company to build my website. I was still working on that website. This morning, Friday, May the 8th, still working on it. And I finally finished everything that I wanted to do this morning about 6:45 a.m. Finally, it took me a whole week to do just a few things. I was not rebuilding the entire website. I was just adding some stuff and removing some stuff. And it took me 5 whole days of working on that. Time versus return on investment. That applies to grants as well. When you've gotten to the point you are sick and tired of being sick and tired with grants, you are sick and tired of being sick and tired of grant research, you understand it, you know how to do it, but you're just sick and tired of it, at that point, that's when you outsource with intention. That's when you outsource strategically, because you know exactly what you need when it comes to grants. You know exactly what you want when it comes to grants. And you are able to communicate that to your grant writer. And then you are able to let some of it go without becoming dependent, without becoming codependent. You are able to take that off your plate and focus on growing your business and focus on the development of your organization while the grant writer does what he or she is great at. When you get to that point, the point that I got to with my website, that is when you outsource. That's when you outsource, because the result of outsourcing from a place of strategy, of outsourcing from a place of intention, you get better communication, you get stronger proposals, you get a more effective partnership, you get better results. And that's the goal. That's the goal for you, and that's the goal for any ethical, responsible, morally obligated grant writer. That is the goal. Not dependency, not codependency, but understanding. And that is story time, ladies and gentlemen. That's the end of story time. Now I have some questions for you. And if you've been here before, you know I always have questions that I want you to seriously, seriously think about. Like Michael Jackson says, I'm all about the Jackson family today. It starts with the man or the woman in the mirror. This is what I want you to think about when you are determining if you are going to hire a grant writer or do it yourself. Do you currently have the capacity to manage grant writing internally? Do you have the time to manage grant writing internally? Do you have the bandwidth? Do you have the energy to manage grant writing internally? Ask yourself that question and be very honest with the answer. My next question: are you outsourcing from strategy and intention or from overwhelm? Because the way you outsource depends on how you're outsourcing and from what place are you outsourcing. My final question that I really, really want you to ask yourself and be honest with yourself: if your grant writer disappeared tomorrow or today, which hopefully that would never happen to you, but if it did, would you still understand your funding process? Would you still be able to come in and pick up where your grant writer left off with understanding of what they were doing until you could outsource and hire again? Would you honestly be able to do that? Because sustainable funding requires leadership awareness. If this conversation, if this free grant Education Friday has helped you realize that you need a deeper understanding of grant strategy, then that's the point of today's free grant Education Friday. Because whether you hire grants, whether you write grants yourself, or you hire support, you still need to have an understanding of how funding and grants work. Regardless to what path you take, you still need to have an understanding. And if you missed my grant workshop yesterday, it was on May the 7th. If you missed it, coaching is your step. Coaching with me is your go-to. This is where me and you go deeper into understanding about grant funding and grant strategy. This coaching is for leaders who want to understand before they outsource, who want to understand maybe how to do it themselves. I want you to make smart decisions. I want you to ask better questions. I want you to build a stronger funding strategy for your organization so that you and your organization can be more successful. And that is what coaching with me will help you do. Make better questions. Ask better questions, make better decisions. If that is what you want, contact me. Go to my website and secure a coaching session or 3 with me. My website is CAPETRYLLC.com. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for joining me on this free Education Friday. And I will see you next week.